This is Tim.
And this is Adam.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Adam in Nagoya for the first time in several months, partly just because we didn't have any comics to critique, but how are you doing?
I'm not bad. The weather's getting warmer. You know, it's finally getting to the hot part of summer, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so our comic this time is from Don Ahé. He told me that's how he pronounces it. He does a webcomic called Road Apples Almanac, and quoting from his email, "I'm taking a break from the main comic strip that has been going since 2008, and have started a story about Bran Bionic, a boy with some bionic appendages who is stranded on an island. If you care to glance at my original strip, Road Apples Almanac, that would be great, and maybe get a feel for Bran Bionic." And at the time that he wrote this, 11 strips were up. There are now 16 pages there. But it's fairly decompressed, so it's a little hard to really critique it with 16 pages. But I read through it a couple of times, and yeah, I read some of his older strips too, the Road Apples Almanac thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. He kind of changes his tack every once in a while. And sometimes it's a gag-a-day, and sometimes it's more of a serialized thing with a larger story, which sometimes has jokes in it and sometimes doesn't. And
right.
Now he's doing something completely different from his normal strip. It seems to be completely unrelated to that. But all of his art seems pretty nice. You know, it's not Jack Kirby, but it doesn't need to be. It's a little more of a... the usual strip is kind of a funny animal thing, sort of. A semi-funny animal. This one is just with a human boy with bionics. No talking animals so far. But, yeah, I found nothing bad to say about this. I enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of hard to say anything about the new comic strip because there's just not a lot of material to form an opinion about. But with that sort of caveat out there, I think that it reads very smoothly. I'm curious to see where these characters are going and what's going to happen with them. There's only really one character.
Right, just Bran, so far anyway.
Yeah, but it has an interesting premise, right? Like this bionic child has crash landed on this apparently deserted island, and there's a drone somehow connected to it, which apparently I think he knocked out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some artwork inside of it. So it's a sort of intriguing premise. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but yeah, there isn't much to say about that. And I also did go back and read probably the first 2 or 3 years worth of the other strip, which I think there's a lot more to say about that.
Okay.
Would you like me to say what I have to say about that?
Okay, well, hang on a second. I did want to say a couple of particular things about Bran Bionic. Things just that I liked. I liked how he's exploring this island, and we see the crashed drone there before he does. We see it at the end of one page, one strip, one day, whatever you want to call it, the May 11th strip. And so that gives us kind of a nice incentive to keep going. Ooh, what's that? I mean, we don't really know what it is until we go to the next page and he recognizes it as the drone. But on this page, he's just saying, I hope I see a sign of civilization soon. And there's a hill that's apparently blocking his view of the drone. So kind of, what's the word? Oh, geez. Don't get old. Your vocabulary starts to evaporate.
Foreshadowing?
Foreshadowing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also maybe that drone, I don't know if it's going to be important in the story or not. It could be just one of those, like a MacGuffin to kind of keep the story moving and bring you through this island. I'm not sure. I I know that he sees horses and he assumes there must be an owner wherever there are horses, which is kind of a strange premise. I mean, I guess if you come from, total civilization, that might be true, but I assume there's still wild horses, especially on a, uncharted island, but I wouldn't know.
But yeah, it's also interesting because, we're starting out with a lot of intriguing questions, like why is he partly bionic and what power does that give him, and how is the story going to move forward when he's on a deserted island? But presumably there's a plan for that, so you just have to keep reading it and find out.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that this artist kind of jumps around in style, like, sometimes it's a gag-a-day, sometimes it's funny animals, and now it's this totally different kind of adventure comic. And so I get the idea that he's really kind of just doing it for fun, having fun with the medium and telling the stories he wants to tell, and, putting this one on hold and going to another one, which I think is a really healthy way to do cartooning. Cartooning is, as you know, such a grueling and labor-intensive activity that if you really commit to one story and you decide you're going to get this one story done, you spend 10, 20 years on this one story and everything else falls by the wayside. So the fact that he's taking time off of that and, putting it into these other things, I think that's a really healthy way of doing this and keeping it playful and fun as something that you enjoy.
Yeah, on the first page of it, I should mention, I guess Bran Bionic is the character, and the story is called The Sable Peril. And the first page is from April 6th of this year. And in the blog, he says, a story that's been in my head since 2015. Let's see what happens. So he's just kind of going with this idea that's been in his head. And at the same time, he seems to be upping his art game. The other ones aren't bad. A lot of them are black and white. Some of them are color. With this one, he's doing a little bit larger size strip. And I noticed that he's putting them up once a week, which kind of implies to me he's putting more time into them, or else he's busy, one of the two. But I do feel like he's trying to challenge himself here.
Yeah, and I think that this is a more mature style in certain ways. The other ones look the lines are very precise and very clean, and I feel like this one is a much more loose style, and that's the part that I feel is a little bit more matured, is that he's kind of focusing on the whole image making rather than just, in service of the story. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in the background. Like there's a page, I think it was maybe page 10, where he's crawling up these sand dunes, and the coloring on them is really nice. It's kind of this weird reddish, pinkish color of sand and stuff. So I don't know. My guess is that maybe he switched to making the art digitally, which allows you more time to kind of play with color and things like that than if you have, if you're scanning in. I mean, he started the first strip in 2008, which is a time where there wasn't as much, like Cintiqs and stuff like that weren't nearly as big as they are now, or iPads or whatever else everybody tries on.
But yeah, it does look like it's digital.
Yeah.
Where the others probably weren't.
Right. So he's saving that time already, just the time that you sit at a scanner. And I mean, I remember like I would wait until I had like 20, 30 pages done of a story before I put it in the scanner, because that process sort of sucks, going in and cleaning it up all in Photoshop and everything.
Yeah, I used to. Yeah, sometimes I would draw several pages. And yeah, the situation that I had, I was photocopying it in 2 pieces and then scanning the pieces. I think I was copying it smaller because my art tablet wouldn't fit in the scanner, if I remember right. It's been a long time ago. But yeah, I could never get into. I tried doing digital a little bit, and it just looked like a mess. So I never really learned how to do that. So what did you want to say about the rest of the comics on the site?
Well, yeah, the original one, that first week or so of strips that's probably some of the best work that, like, when it first starts, just because, he probably had those ideas in his head for a while before he actually set pen to paper. But that very first strip is I could easily imagine that being one of the syndicated strips by like King Syndicate or something like that, like picking it up and reading it in any newspaper in the US. It has a perfect comedic timing. And that was the thing that struck me about a lot of his earlier strips, is that they have very, very precise and good comedic timing. There's one particular one, and I can't remember exactly. I think it was from 2009, where he's walking in the dark. He falls into a well. It might not even be the dark. He's walking and falls into a well, and there's a couple of panels where it just shows the well without him. Or I don't know if it's a well. It might be just a pit. And then the very last panel has a word balloon coming out saying, "This is not going to do anything good for my attempt to stop swearing," or something like that. He says it in a lot more funny way, but so the timing is really good. And I feel like if he had kept it as just that gag-a-day thing, yeah, it very much reads like a newspaper comic strip, one of the good ones when it's good.
Although the first strip talks about eating lamb poo, which I don't think would make the comic page in a newspaper, but
you're right about that. But it does have
maybe an indie newspaper.
Yeah, like a weekly.
Yeah.
But he definitely has, like, I think that strip has two, like a sub punchline and then the main punchline. So he's definitely got comedy chops. There's a bunch of times where I felt that he had executed them very well as far as the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, some of them are more kind of story focused or even just character focused. And that's the part that was a little bit intriguing at some points, because it's not all told to you at once. Like, this dog is a sheepdog. He can talk to his owner, which apparently is rare. Most animals don't talk in this world. And he's also super strong when necessary. Like, it doesn't happen all the time, but when he needs to, he can kill, or, I think he killed he killed a lion, right? He like stripped a lion down to its bones.
Don't think I saw that one. I jumped around.
Okay. Yeah, so when he needs to be, he's incredibly strong, but really the main feature about him is that he smells terrible and his breath is terrible. And and then I think at one point they come to live with a rooster, and the rooster is always trying to kill the master. But he also depends on the master. So it is kind of interesting. He builds this kind of world, and I sort of wish I spent more time with it, because I think that it was definitely going somewhere interesting, and I'd be curious to keep going and see what I think once I read more of the story.
Yeah, a couple of times I hit the random button and then read from whatever point it threw me to. And there was a series in, I think it was early 2011, where someone was experimenting with, some of the talking animals against their will, like switching their brains with other creatures, because this person wanted to switch brains with a character who is immortal so that he would be immortal.
Okay.
And it went awry. His plan went awry, of course. And it wasn't clear to me if the brains ever got put back where they were supposed to be. But it was kind of interesting, because I felt like even when he wasn't really trying to be funny, it still had the comic timing. Like, it felt like it was setting up a punchline that he didn't really want necessarily to be funny.
Yeah.
And just kind of gave it this forward momentum. He was like, and just kind of the world that he had built too, it just kept you going. Where there was another strip that we did on this show, I did with someone else a year or two ago, where the art looked great and the jokes just went flat in almost every strip. Like, it felt like he was trying really hard and it just wasn't funny to me. And so, yeah, this is a lot better than that one in terms of the comic timing and the jokes.
Yeah, I think that's really such a hard thing is to be able to get both of those things down. I mean, it's one thing to be able to write. It's another thing to be able to write humor, which is so difficult to translate in that visual medium. And then to be able to actually draw that, because there's a lot of humor in artwork as well, right? I mean, like Garfield, I don't think has ever had a funny joke, but it has funny looking characters, right? So I think that this particular artist and writer, I should say as well, is, I think that he has good humor chops, and that's I say that as a huge compliment because, like you just said, so many cartoonists don't have that. So, and the premise that you were just describing, I didn't get to that point in this story, but that's such a cool or interesting premise, like swapping brains because you want to get immortal. Like, it's such a weird. It's one of those things where you have to be just sort of in the story and let the story go. Like, I'm speaking from the perspective of a writer. You kind of just have to let the story take on a life of its own and to be able to create that kind of a weird premise, don't you? Like, that the character's motivation is to be immortal, and then the way to go about it is by swapping brains and stuff. It's such a interesting premise. So. Definitely props to this guy for the writing.
One suggestion I would make about the site, roadapplesalmanac.com, I'm not seeing like an archive page. I mean, you've got the calendar and you can jump back month by month, but if I wanted to go back and read that 2011 story, it would take a little work to get there. And a lot of webcomics have some kind of an archive page where it's easy to find the various stories that have happened or whatever. So it would be nice to have something like that on this site.
Well, okay, I agree with you. And there is a little drop-down tab on the side that allows you to jump to a particular point in the story. And I found that, I think it's on the left side of the page, at least for where the browser that I was using.
Oh, the jump to comic. Oh, yeah, there it is. I see.
Yeah, so the jump to comic navigator is critical because, so this was made in WordPress, and there's a WordPress kind of add-on that you can put in called Comic Press. As soon as I saw it, I knew what it was because I used to use it.
Yeah.
And so that jump to comic is critical because the little navigation there, just by pushing next, preview, first, and last, it's so easy to push the wrong button, especially if you're on a phone and you have big meat fingers like I do. And so several times I would intend to push the next button and accidentally push last, and then I have to try to figure out where I was. So that jump to comic definitely saved me.
Okay.
So for listeners out there who are going to check this out, definitely find that button first.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the menu that it brings up. I'm kind of wishing that it had dates of the strips in it. I mean, even looking through it, I'm not really sure where that story was that I was talking about. The names of the individual strips aren't ringing a bell. So I might have just trial and error try to track it down again.
I think he has them organized by story arcs. And so if you remember what the general story arc was, but they're not always that clear. But yeah, I definitely think there are better options for putting up webcomics these days, or there are hosts that do all that work for you. But, he has this system up and running since 2008, and there's no sense in changing it, I think, at this point. And I think he has a fair amount of followers because I do see comments, especially on the later strips, of people coming in to check on it and stuff like that. And what I do like that he's used a feature of Comics Press is he can put his own little sort of bonus content in there. So there's one part where he shows the original sketch of how he jotted the idea down to himself, and then, of course, you can compare that to the strip that he posted. There's some other ones where he, just put some kind of supplementary material there once in a while, and I think that's always a cool thing because you get a little bit of extra, background to the story.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely listeners might want to check this one out, roadapple.almanac.com. Just kind of start anywhere, maybe. It all seems to be pretty good from the beginning.
Yeah. That, like I said, that first strip is a really good way to kick it off. And then, as you said, you could probably jump in anywhere because he sort of jumps around as far as what the strip seems to be about and how he decides to tell it. So,
yeah. Okay. Anything else you wanted to say?
No. Don, keep up the good work. We'll keep checking in with you and see how it keeps going.
Yeah. Okay, so listeners, if you would like us to critique your work, send a PDF or a link to your comic to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll take a look at it and talk about it here. So thanks for listening, and thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Tim. Talk to you next time.